It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. This is another episode of Frontline Friday with my very special guest, Bridget Gleason. Bridget, how are you today?
Andy, today is a good day.
As opposed to any other day, or?
I know. I usually wake up and think every day is a good day. So today is like most of the other days. Today's a great day.
Oh, good.
It's a great day. What about you?
Oh, yeah. Excellent day. I was up really early today because my first, this is a day I interview, my sort of day a week. I interview a lot of people. And my first interview was at 6 a.m. my time. So I was a little blurry-eyed, but I think we did a good job.
Good. Don't say which one that is, just because you don't want to bias people.
That's right. Don't bias
they
that
listen to it and say, "Oh, that's the one."
That's the one
where he was up at 5.
Yeah. Well, you could tell I'm in my California studio today because, time change had to be up. But so it means I wasn't out early, joining you on the streets, avoiding coyotes and other things on my run.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I was out a little earlier today. I had an early meeting in San Francisco, so had to be out on the road a little earlier today, a little earlier than usual, but not too bad.
But the habits are important, as we talked about a couple episodes ago.
As we've talked, habits are important.
Habits are important. All right, so we have first thing we're doing is we have a question from a listener.
Excellent.
And I know, very exciting. And this is from Amy, and she said that she listened to our episode on meaningful career paths for salespeople, which was a couple episodes ago. And she's an SDR and wants to position herself to move up, and either to an account management or possibly an account exec job. So she says, besides crushing her numbers, what else should she be doing or learning to demonstrate to her bosses that she's ready to move up?
That's an excellent question.
Good job, Amy.
Good job, Amy. And I think it's one that a lot of people must have. I get it a lot as I've been responsible for large SDR teams as well. And, crushing your number is important because it shows a mastery of the skill that you need to be an SDR and discipline and goal setting. There's all kinds of things that demonstrates. The thing that I tell SDRs that are looking to move up, and the gap that I see between the SDR role and a closing role, is that once an SDR gets you in the door, there are a lot of steps that happen once you get in the door to move a prospect through the sales process. Mm-hmm. And it's those starting to develop and be familiar with some of those skills is really important. So some of the things that I recommend is making sure that they're sitting in on other parts of the sales process with their assigned rep. So however much exposure they can get in that is super helpful. Things that they learn on their own, I know some of them will read different books out there that are on it. They'll go to webinars, they'll listen to podcasts, they'll do some of their own self-education. That's really also helpful. Understanding the product. So we would do at Sumo Logic different certifications, and sometimes they would go and get demo certified, even though they might not need to, just to show that, I've also got the product mastery. So those are a couple that come to mind.
Oh, I think those are great suggestions. The other thing I would suggest is, start reading, right? Start, brushing up on some of the sales books, perhaps that talk about some of the skills and behaviors you need to have to become a good account exec. Read up on the industry, even something as simple as like current events, right? Reading a newspaper online, or use Flipboard, whatever you use to sort of stay current, because having that bigger worldview, I think, is really one of the key things that I look for when I'm looking to hire people into a more senior sales role. I want to know that they've got a broader perspective on things.
Yeah, I think that's a super point. I was had coffee this morning with a VC firm actually in Boston, and they specialize in helping sort of growth companies. So they focus a lot on the go-to-market. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they look for in their CEOs, and they look for, and I know that I look for it in sales candidates, is what this broader worldview, this curiosity, this growth mindset. It's an excellent skill to develop and cultivate, because it'll help you wherever you go, certainly in sales, to be knowledgeable about world events, to be knowledgeable about the industry, to be endlessly curious. That will translate into interacting with prospects and customers, and a great skill to develop.
And just curious about the world, right? I
mean, because
you're dealing with people from, even if you only have a sales territory that's, let's say, in the United States, I mean, you're going to be dealing with people that have maybe traveled the world, come from other parts of the world, also have a broader worldview. This is a way you start connecting with them, because you can talk about things other than just, right, what's there in front of you, or maybe put what you're talking about in context of something that's happened in the broader world. So to me, opening up your eyes, being self-aware of what's going on around you, really important.
Yeah, that's it. That's a great one.
All right, Amy, you got a couple things there to focus on. Hopefully that answers the question. If you have any other further follow-up, please send us an email at andy@zerotimeselling.com. So today, Bridget, I thought we'd talk about persuasion. I mean, this is.
How are you going to convince me to talk about this?
Yeah, so
let's start there.
How am I going to persuade you to talk about it?
Persuade me to talk about that?
Talk to the hand.
Right.
Yeah, and I once read this statement, which was said that to master the art of selling, you must master the art of persuasion. And I thought, that's not true. I don't agree with that.
You don't?
No, because I don't think that selling is really about persuading. I mean, if you are, as we talk about increasingly these days, if you're in a position where you're become a trusted advisor to someone, and you're doing the co-creation of value, you're helping the customer vision where they want to be and how you can help them get there, persuading doesn't really fit into that.
I don't know. I still think there is a part of sales, even when the things that you're talking about, the education component, making sure that there's a good fit. Persuasion is not manipulation. So it's not about persuading somebody that's not a good fit. But sometimes people need to be persuaded, and a little boost to help them get over the hump, to get them over. It just gives your prospect, I don't know, I think of it as a boost of confidence almost, to go do the actions that they need to do to get a deal through. Deals are not, typically, there's not a single decision maker. And I think more and more studies are showing that the number of decision makers, particularly in complex sales, is growing.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think it's aligning with your prospect and helping them also feel, it's that transference of energy, that's transference of confidence, that this is the right decision.
Sure. So I can agree with that. So where's the persuasion in there?
I think of persuasion as the art of getting people to do things that are in their own best interest. And so persuasion can be the discussion about why it's the right product for them.
Yeah, see, I think of it from this could just be a matter of perspective, right? And is that for me, if I am working with a prospect and I've done a great discovery with them, part of part of the way that they are learning about what we do and the insights we provide and so on is through the questions we ask, how we synthesize some of the data information they give us to create that vision of what we can do for them, how we synthesize that together. And there's a part of that process. If we truly believe that we've got this value co-creation happening, if we're doing this properly, right? If it's not just pure transactional sale, but we're doing some value creation, co-creation, then they're in that situation we always talk about. Sort of ideal isn't it always better if the customer thinks this is their idea, right? Or they're involved in the creation of what this vision is. Is persuasion part of that?
Definitely. I think that's all. I think we're, in some ways, Andy, I think we're talking about the same thing. Slave, I think asking good questions, and part of that discovery is it's co-discovering, it's co-creating. But that's also, the persuasion is helping lead them down the path that you're uncovering. You're learning more about them. They're learning more about the product. And I think just getting them to take this path with you and to trust you and to open up, I guess to me that's selling, that's persuasion, that's co-creation. And maybe I don't see persuasion as a negative at all.
Well, I think in the way it's talked about and taught in many cases, it is a little more, I'll call it coercive, if you will, to a certain degree, right? In a more old-fashioned sense in sales, right? It's the hard close. It's a lot of the techniques used for sort of the intermediate closes, assumptive closes, trial closes, so on and so on and so forth. That to me, there's other skills, and you sort of use the key word, and we've talked about this in the past, is really, are you inspiring and leading your customer to a decision? And to me, that seems different than persuading.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Persuading means like you have to really, we always have to make a business case, right? And provide the facts. But persuading is like, we just don't quite have our act together. So I've got to be nimble on my feet to try to, close that gap between where we ended up with our business case and where the customer wants to be. And to me, that's the persuasion gap, as opposed to saying, we can do a better job of having them help us put together the business case for them so they can have this vision of where they need to be. And we've done that together, then that persuasion gap doesn't exist anymore. They've persuaded themselves.
I think right now it's semantics.
All right. You think that's semantics?
Well, I do, because I think that persuasion to me, it's not coercion, it's not manipulation, I am more persuaded by people who are inspiring because
Perfect.
I listen to them.
But you're being persuaded by their inspiration, not by them trying to persuade you. And maybe that's the difference between direct and indirect persuasion. Maybe that's really the thing here. Right?
And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. And then I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah, because to me, like, one of the things obviously that, I'm big on and that teach to everybody is, how do you be responsive, right? If you can master your responsiveness, you can accelerate your responsiveness in dealing with your prospects and your customers, you create this positive perception in their mind, and that perception persuades them, right? They got that perception of you as somebody they want to do business with, that somebody's going to be there. That persuades them, but it's not the overt persuasion. I'm really talking about the overt attempts to persuade that is being taught as closing skills and so on and so forth, which to me I think are outmoded and outdated.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think I wouldn't be an advocate for, okay, here are 10 tips and tricks to persuade. Say this, say. So I'm not of that bent, but I think that throughout the process, what are the things that you are doing? And sometimes they're subtle. It's about trust. It's about inspiration. It's about leadership. It's about knowledge. It's about compassion. Do I really care about what they're doing? It's about curiosity. Those are things that make the person I don't want to say susceptible to being persuaded, but willing. Here's somebody I want to follow. I don't mind being persuaded by people I respect, by people I admire, because I want to learn from them. And so I am a willing persuadee with certain people.
Just a second, I got to look that up. Persuade.
I know. Let's not.
Bridget's word of the day.
No. What did I hear? I heard someone on NPR the day use the word philologist, which is somebody who loves words. Philology is a study of words.
Oh.
So I love words, but I shouldn't be making them up because I think that would disqualify me as a philologist if I'm like a word maker-upper, and I don't know what that is called.
A word maker-upper is a faux philologist.
Is a faux philologist, yes, and I don't want to be accused of that.
Yes, we want to stay away from.
I take my words seriously.
We want to stay away from faux philology.
That's right.
Yeah.
Stay away.
Yeah. That word's probably banned in 10 countries. So, yeah, I sort of look at this idea of persuasion really like maybe using the metaphor of a debate. Because to me, if you want to be an effective debater, then it's not enough to build an argument that's solely focused on what you believe to be true. I mean, if you want to be persuasive and to really, in my mind, fashion a compelling argument that'll sway people, then you have to be able to argue both sides of the issue, right? And provide context, right? You have to understand the other side as well as you understand your own. And so I think in sales, you sort of the same thing. If you really want to be persuasive, in the sense, is that you really have to relate what you're selling in the context of your prospect's needs, requirements, desires, objectives, and so on. And that then becomes persuasive when you're talking about them.
Yeah, and I think so here's why I think persuasion is important, is that just facts alone don't necessarily sell.
No, I think we can all agree that most cases that's true.
And I think about persuasion as starting to engage the other side of the brain. That is where we make a lot of our decisions. And then we go validate. And then we go validate on facts. And so if you don't know how to persuade, you're just dealing with one side of the brain, and I think you're going to have a harder time.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because to me, and again, we get to perceptions, and this sort of pervades everything we talk about in the sales business, about sales training and training for closing skills and so on. See, right. To me, persuasion is about appealing to the logical side, and because I agree 100% that everything is about emotion. Starts with emotions, right? We talked about this in a previous episode. Is studies shown that 100% of all decisions initiate from the emotional side.
From the emotional side, right.
So to me, relying on persuasion is all about trying to say, I'm just trying to rely on the logic of persuading someone to my point of view, right? Because I think that's what persuasion, and I haven't looked it up.
See, this is you know what, Andy, this is where we are, I think we're essentially saying the same thing, but we're coming at it from different angles. I don't see persuasion as being just all about the logic for me, but I can see that there are people out there where they think exactly like you do, that for them it's persuasion is, okay, I'm just going to sort of shoehorn in and the drilling back on the data and the details, lack of regard for the other piece of it. So I think of the emotion and how you, again, get people to, how you inspire. How do they trust you? That's
which
call
comes,
it persuasion, call it something else.
Right. And those come from perceptions, right? Trust is built on top of perceptions of you as an individual or you as an organization, part of an organization. And that's not logical. The perceptions aren't logical. Perceptions are emotional. So, getting back to the point is, I start to see persuasion as people trying to say, look, here are the facts. Here's a logical reason why you need to think those facts are important, which we see so many sales professionals sort of resort to, right? It's like, well, gosh, it should be obvious that here's the value of what we do. So thus I'm going to try to persuade you that this is important, as opposed to dealing with the emotions, dealing with the questions, understanding the context, and so on, which, again, for me are more important skills. Being responsive, really knowing your customer's business, that to me is a skill and an art. And if you have that, then the ability to work with them and have them persuade themselves that you are the right solution, the right vendor, the right supplier, becomes an easier outcome.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was thinking about I was shopping for reading glasses. And when I was in this, they're nice reading glasses, by the way, Andy. They are beautiful frames, okay, that I found. And when I was there...
Right, and you're going to lose them, by the way.
I have not lost... This was years ago.
Okay.
I hang on to them. I like have a GPS tag in them, essentially. The woman... I had tried on a pair of sunglasses, which I didn't need. And I put them on, and I liked them. And glasses are expensive. And I thought, I really don't need to be spending money on this. And I said to the salesperson, I don't need, look at these. These are trendy. These are going to go out of style. These are going to, and I gave her all the objections in my mind. All I wanted, Andy, was someone to enable me to make the decision. And she did just that. And I threw out a lot of objections. And I wouldn't say that. So when I think about, did she persuade me?
No, she told you looked great in them.
Which was very persuasive.
Yeah, right. But
so in a way, she
enabled you to make that decision. Persuade yourself that you should do it.
But it's always that.
Yeah, that's why I think that's the point. Gosh, audience, thanks for bearing with us as we work through this. But it's
you and I sort through our differences.
Well, but I think it's important for people to understand is there is so much emphasis placed in sales in general on persuading somebody to do something or convincing somebody to do something, which, I always harken back to, if I do the things that I need to do, if I understand product services and understand my customer's business, I ask great questions, I ask great second and third questions that, really get down to the detail. I synthesize what this information I've gathered into a great vision for them. None of that overtly is persuasive, but it is ultimately persuasive, right?
Correct.
And that's really what I'm talking about is if you're feeling like your job as a salesperson is to convince somebody to do something or to persuade somebody to do something, I think the perspective is wrong. Your perspective is to help somebody make a decision. And you will, through your various efforts, ultimately be persuasive.
Right.
But it's a little more, at least to my mind, the more successful people are a little more indirect in that than direct.
I was just looking at just a definition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's several of them. Process aimed at changing a person or a group's attitude or behavior by using written or spoken words to convey information, feelings, reason, or some combination.
Okay. That's pretty comprehensive.
I don't know if that helps or not, but I think both of our points is that it's not a tactic.
It's not a goal.
It's not a goal. And I don't see it as a last-ditch effort. Oh, my gosh, now I've got to persuade him. I think it's just this journey you take with them. And along the way, as you say, Andy, you're helping them buy. You're helping them buy something and go along the process to discover what is it that's going to solve what particular pain or problem or aspiration that they have at that time. And you will be more persuasive if you are knowledgeable and compassionate and interesting and trustworthy. And all these things allow you to be more persuasive through the process to help them come to that decision, ultimately convince themselves.
Right. And I think you sort of start boiling it down there, is that persuasion's really, to me, is more a matter of who and what you are.
Yeah.
As opposed to what you say.
That's a good way to put it.
And, back to this Ralph Waldo Emerson quote I really love, which is, your actions speak so loudly I cannot hear what you say. That's really what it gets down to. And I know we've brought that up before, but it's worth repeating and bringing to bear, because we are going to be most persuasive by the actions we take to support our customer, as opposed to trying to build this logical case that we present. And I would argue that, even if you sort of put this in arguing the case, it just, thought is, if you're, maybe there's some lawyers listening to this could comment on it. But if you're presenting to a jury, the logics and, the time frame is important, but I bet you the attorneys spend a lot of their time dealing with the emotional side of things with the jury, as opposed to the logic.
Oh, yeah.
At least based on my experience watching Law & Order and all those other shows.
Yeah, okay, so we'll go ahead and bill you as the expert then.
Yeah.
Because you watch Law & Order.
Watch Law & Order.
Right. You've learned a lot from Law & Order.
Yeah, I remember my daughter had an internship at a court in Boston, actually, when she was going to university in Boston. And she was helping intake of people who've been charged with crimes and doing intake interviews and so on, and then sitting in court and sort of observing the process. And she's like, there was apparently the judge was really sort of coming down hard on some of the new prosecuting attorneys, that are just new to the job, and they were given these low-level cases. She was working in the low-level court, and her comment she said once is, didn't any of these people ever watch Law & Order growing up? Because the judge kept correcting them on matters of process and procedure. She's like, I knew that.
That's fantastic.
Anyway, that's my digression. So, well, good. All right. I think we've beaten that one to death.
I think so.
But actions, to the bottom line, actions speak louder than words if you want to be persuasive.
True.
All right. Cool. Anything else we want to talk about today before we excuse the audience and let them go about their days? I
think we should excuse them and so that they'll come back to the next one. I'm afraid if we keep arguing on this one, we won't have anybody listening next week.
Well, hey, if this is an argument, then this is pretty low level.
Absolutely.
So, Bridget, as always, thank you. And friends, thank you for joining us again on this episode of Frontline Friday. And we will look forward to talking to you next time.
Have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.